Hey, what's up everyone? I have no agenda for today's video, except just to talk about my reflections and thoughts on Damar Hamlin's injury. I was watching the game last night when he collapsed on the field. At first, I didn't realize what was happening because I was watching the play and it just looked like a normal tackle after a catch was made, and I didn't even realize why the game had stopped for a minute until the commentators were talking about there was somebody collapsed on the field. And after coming back from commercials, they identified that it was Damar Hamlin and that they showed the replay of how he had made the tackle, gotten up for a second, and then had just collapsed. And then as they were letting people know what was going on because the cameras weren't showing it, you could just see the difference in demeanor on players' faces, and I felt my feelings kind of following suit. You could tell how serious it was. It really just looked like a run-of-the-mill tackle that you see hundreds of times during a normal NFL game. And those tackles are ones that both receivers and the tackling player often just kind of get up and walk off. But this time it didn't happen that way. And that was really jarring and really, I think, hit home the idea of like, this is a really dangerous and violent sport that we're watching for entertainment and that these guys give their lives to. And I think the moment that really hit home for me was when I heard that they were doing CPR on him on the field. You don't do CPR on somebody whose heart is beating. But we see these football players all geared up on Sundays or Mondays or Thursdays with their helmets and the reassurances from the NFL that they're taking the players' safety seriously. And I think yesterday was just really hit home that no matter what precautions you take, it's built into that kind of risk, that kind of impact, and that kind of serious injury is built into the way that football is played. And no amount of protective gear can completely eliminate that risk, and there's always a possibility of something traumatic like that really happening. And even when it became clear that the game wasn't going to continue, I just kept watching because there was something about the silence of the broadcast, the contrast between the non-stop commentary of a normal game and you hear the chatter of the players and the impacts and all of that, the contrast of the measured speech, the silence and the solidarity that you can really feel even through the TV. And this is something that, even though football is a much more physical sport, that is a part of the risk that athletes take on the daily basis. So I do hope that Hamlin returns to full health, whether he decides to continue playing football or not. I hope he has the liberty and the physical capability of making that choice of whether he wants to return or not. I don't know how the NFL is going to handle this. As of right now, they've said that they don't have any plans to resume the game this week. And I think the commentators said it best when one of them had said that the game doesn't matter right now. I think there are times when we see what's going on in sports and that becomes all-consuming because it hits certain buttons for us, whether it's the competitiveness or whether it's political issues getting brought out onto the sports field. But I'm glad that there are times that give us perspective, even in something as ugly and catastrophic as this injury, that makes us say like, hey, that's a human being out there and his life is in danger at the moment. Screw the game, screw seeding for playoffs. This is just people banding around a teammate or an opponent who is hurting and we don't know what's going on, and being united in that feeling of loss and that feeling of lostness. So again, I do hope that Hamlin recovers soon, whatever is going on with his body, that it's something that the doctors can take care of and that he can recover from. I don't know what this is going to mean for, at least personally, me watching football in the future. I think that's probably the scariest sports moment that I've ever witnessed, and one that really hit home for me for whatever reason, even though I've never been a football player. So I do hope that if there's any takeaway from this, that we can remember, even in the most competitive of sports moments, even at our angriest at players or at teams or whatever decisions that people in sports make, that at the end of the day, these are people living their lives, but also putting their bodies on the line in very real ways for our entertainment. And we need to keep that in mind, that these are people with lives outside of sports, people who look forward to one day having a future outside of that sport.